yeah. If you fuck with winning, put your lighters to the sky. How could I make sense when I got millions on my mind? Coming with it.
Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Cass from Cass's Critters here, and today I'm here with Rummy. If you don't know Rummy, he is an adoption that I picked up at the San Diego Super Show. He was for adoption from a rescue, so I adopted him, and I even donated to the rescue because I really like them. So yeah, this is Rummy, and as you see, he is a leopard gecko. And in this video we're going to be talking about the best budget-friendly beginner lizards. So let's get to that. Alrighty guys, so the first lizard on my list for a budget-friendly beginner lizard would be the leopard gecko. And I say the leopard gecko because not only are they inexpensive to buy and set up originally, but their feeding isn't too insane compared to those of a tegu or a monitor lizard or something like that. And I also think that you can get pretty cool colorations in them for relatively cheap, especially if you, I don't know, there's just a lot of cool things about leopard geckos. I can go on about them. I personally have 5 of them. I have him, I have a girl with a disease that I will show you in a second maybe, because she just ate and I don't want to make her throw up. But then I also have Nova, who is in a 20 long, I have Nebula, who is in that tank, and then I have Orion in a bin over there. And they all look so vastly different, and it is really cool. So yeah. I chose leopard geckos to be on this list because, like I said, they do not cost much to set up originally or to purchase overall. And their food isn't that much, especially if you purchase it from an expo. Come here, Rummy. Yeah, you can climb on my shirt. Leopard geckos need about a 20 long, which is what I recommend as a minimum for them. I recommend a 20 long tank as adults, as well as a heat pad with a thermostat set to about 89-90 degrees. A small water bowl is sufficient enough for them. You can use really quite a variety of substrates. I personally use paper towel just because I find it's easiest for me to maintain and clean and stuff like that. But you can use an ABG mix, you can use Eco-Earth, you can use shredded aspen, but of course make sure your husbandry is on point and that your gecko is not ingesting the substrate, because that would be bad. But like I was saying, what I like to do is I like to have a calcium dish in there so that they can lick the calcium when they please, but I also dust every other meal about, and they get fed every other day about, so yeah. I could be doing less, but that is mainly for the special needs geckos that I have. As for the calcium dish, you can put calcium with and without D3 so they can choose between it, and I use water bottle caps, water bottle lids for that. Or you can also use like milk lids or something like that. They really don't need that much. Make sure you change it every once in a while. Like I said, you do need calcium with and without D3, and then you also need a multivitamin powder, as well as all that. I personally feed mine superworms and dubia roaches. I buy these from my local expo. I can get 500 superworms for $8 from Rainbow Mealworms at the San Diego Super Show. But it's really dependent on what vendors are there. Personally, out here, dubia roaches are a lot more expensive, and in some places they're even illegal. So make sure you check your local laws before committing to dubia roaches. As long as you gut load crickets, they can be used. I used crickets in the past and I've never had any issues. And I've had my oldest for over a year now, about a year and a half. She's about 2 years old. So yeah. When they're babies, I like to set them up in 6-quart bins like this, with a very sterile environment, which is paper towels, a large water bottle cap for a water bowl, the smaller water bottle cap for the calcium dish, and then 2 paper towel roll, or not paper towel, toilet paper roll tubes as hides, because those can be easily switched out when they are soiled or when they are walked on or if anything happens. And I do this for a quarantine measure as well as a grow out measure, just because it is easier and you will not have to buy a permanent enclosure or keep upgrading enclosures as they grow. Because I know I did that with my first two original geckos, and it was kind of a pain in the ass. So there's that. And they grow rather quickly, and they can breed, I believe, as young as 9 months old, but I wouldn't recommend that, especially if you're a beginner, because you just want to enjoy your pet, and that is what you're supposed to do, I guess. So, I believe that's pretty much it about leopard geckos, as for the basics, I mean. I really wouldn't recommend using those red crappy lights on them, because they can see that, especially at night. If you want to use a bulb heat source, get a ceramic heat emitter and keep it on a thermostat, because, yeah, you could use a daylight basking light as well, but they will only use it if absolutely necessary from what I've noticed. They will prefer the heat pad and to be hidden unless they are an extremely outgoing gecko for some weird reason. So yeah. And they do require some clutter, I guess, is the best way to say it. They do require some hiding spots because they can be rather shy, especially as babies, and babies will have a bit of an attitude, and they can scream at you, and they can whip their tails around at you, and they can also drop their tails, so that's always something to be careful of, because you do not want your little gecko dropping your tail, because that would suck. Nebula in there has actually dropped half of her tail due to a hide injury, so make sure you watch out what you buy. And let's get to the next lizard. Actually, really quick, I decided that I'm going to show you the rest of my geckos. This is Tipsy. She has metabolic bone disease, and this disease is a result of not properly supplementing your geckos, which, as you see, she has really curvy bones right here, and that she does look a little funny. And she's in a really loving home now. She was also a rescue when I got Rummy as well. So yeah. I don't know how well you can see behind me, but right here is Nebula. She's a really, really friendly gecko. She is also my oldest, being at about 2 years old. And what I was talking about with her nubby tail is she had dropped half of it. And this is Nebula. This one is Orion. He is about the same age as Nebula. I adopted them at the same time, and as you see, he doesn't have as thick as a tail. I took him to the vet, and he is completely a-okay. There's absolutely nothing wrong with him. He is not malnourished in any way. He just rather thick up his body than thick up his tail, and that's pretty much just a thing that they do, I guess, or that they can do. And yeah, I'm very much working hard to try to thick up his tail, but he just does not want to thick it up, so I don't know. But he is a pretty big boy. This is not Nova. This is Orion. And last but not least, this last one is Nova, and he is quickly surpassing even Nebula in weight and size. He is a rather beefy boy. He just turned a year recently, and here. I got him extremely young, so I was able to control his diet pretty much the entirety of his life. I've had him for about a year, and I got him extremely, extremely young, so he has been feeding very readily for me, and he is becoming a beefy boy. And yeah. Now the next lizard that I recommend is a lizard I unfortunately no longer have, and that is the African fat-tailed gecko. The African fat-tailed gecko is pretty much the exact same husbandry as a leopard gecko, except the African fat-tailed gecko needs more humidity, being that they are, from Africa. So they do need a little bit more humidity, but that is easily dealt with by either misting their substrate or offering them a humidity box all the time rather than just some of the time, as like when they're shedding, like with a leopard gecko. I've noticed with African fat-tailed geckos that they do not readily accept worms off of tongs. They want something that's going to move around, so dubia roaches and crickets are definitely a must for them in order to beef them up. But that is just what I noticed from mine. Mine was a male, and males tend to be pickier in reptiles, I guess. But yeah. And like I said, it's pretty much the exact same husbandry as a leopard gecko, except just more humidity. But a cool thing about African fat-tail geckos is females can be housed together as long as you watch for aggression, and I really say this loosely because while some have done it with a lot of success and a lot of like no problems, and it is said to be okay, you obviously want to look for aggression, you want to look for nipping, you want to look for bullying, you want to look for all of that. And it's not something I necessarily recommend for a beginner because it can be a little more tough to maintain, sadly. But a substrate that I could recommend for African fat-tail geckos include EcoEarth, ABG Mix, or something that holds humidity, or you can use paper towels or newspaper and offer them that humidity box that's really gonna boost the humidity as it would in that area. And yeah, but pretty much everything is identical to leopard gecko for the most part. I still wouldn't recommend lights for them because they are more of a shyer lizard, as I've noticed. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I still say for a 20 long for one, and maybe go up to a 40 breeder for 2 or more. So yeah. But yeah, same thing with the water dish, the calcium dish, everything. It's pretty much all the same. Same temperatures, same heat mat, same thermostat, everything. It's all the same thing. So yeah. Alrighty guys, sorry for the angle change. I had to adjust my camera a little bit. But another lizard that I recommend for beginners, and I think is really awesome for beginners and could really go more cheap or expensive, is the crested gecko and the gargoyle gecko. I unfortunately don't have either, but I had 2 crested geckos and I rehomed them because the only problem with them is the fact that they are rather heat sensitive and they can be kind of picky. And my house got a little too warm for them, and I started to notice a little less activity and more lethargy with them. But for crested geckos, I personally would rather keep them under 75. Around 72 is probably about perfect for them, but they can either live in a bin or they can live in a tank. And as for a tank, I could go, what I personally did is I had them in an Exoterra. 12 by 12 by 18 is good for a juvenile, but an 18 by 18 by 24 is ideal for an adult, a single adult that is. What I did is I went bioactive with it personally, but you don't have to go bioactive. You could have just plain old EcoEarth with fake plants and fake sticks, and it'll work just as well as a bioactive one will. The only thing about bioactive is that there'll be real plants, and you'll have a light system on it, which can really add to their cost a lot. I know my light system was about $75, and it's not even that great, honestly. But another thing is that with bioactive, that the feces will be cleaned up on its own by the cleanup crew. But the cool thing about crested geckos and why I like them so much and why I think they're a good beginner reptile is that not only can you purchase them rather cheap, but once you have the enclosure set up, they don't necessarily require insects. You can offer them, and that could be a treat for them, but they do not necessarily require it. I had one named Freya, and she personally hated insects and would not eat it for shit. But then Isla was absolutely obsessed with insects and wanted it way too much and wouldn't eat her Pangea. But the thing is if you get them eating on Pangea readily, that Pangea is only about $18 for a half-pound bag, and that bag will last you forever. And then you can buy it at expos for a cheaper price, and that's always good. And also, baby crested geckos, unsexed baby crested geckos that have no tails because they do not regrow their tails when they lose them. They can be bought cheaper. I've seen them as cheap as $35 about, and those are unsexed babies, which is really cool. And they look still really nice. Crested geckos do not have many true morphs. They have line bred traits, but they do not have many true morphs. One of the true morphs is lily white, and it is really expensive. Big surprise. So you wouldn't be buying that if you're on a budget. But you can buy cheap fake plants from places like Wish, or you can use Chewy, or you could use price checking at Petco or something like that, because that is a thing you can do. Ooh, how cool. I just told you something. And then you could, or what I did is I took a cork bark from a tree that had fallen outside, and I sanitized it and I cleaned it and I made sure it was absolutely perfect. and I made it into hides for them, which was always really cool. Which was also really cool. I am tired, I am sorry. But that was really cool. And the thing is, with Bioactive, you are going to need a drainage layer and a sheet to separate the drainage layer, but that's not that much more expensive as an add-on. I think it's like a $4 add-on, it's really not that bad. In my opinion, going bioactive in the long run is cheaper than doing a non-bioactive setup, because everything will be taken care of for you and it will last much longer. Then you will have live plants, and those live plants will propagate, and when they propagate you will have more plants. How cool. So you'll be able to do it for more enclosures in case you want more geckos, because trust me, you will. They are very addicting. It is really awesome. But what I used for a drainage layer is a big, like 50-pound bag of gravel. You can buy that at Home Depot for about $3. I bought that and I used about a 2-inch layer of that gravel. Then I put a window screen, what is it? Oh man, what was it? It was, it was not aluminum, it was not metal. But I put a window screen down, and I made sure that it was not big enough that dirt can slip through it. And then you can also plant the tank, and the tank will be ready after you let it relax for a month and let it grow in and let it have its die-off period, which it usually does as the bioactivity sets in. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it about crested geckos. I mean, they're really, really, really simple, and they handle fairly well. The only thing about them is, like I said, they can be rather picky with food, and they can be picky with temperatures, meaning that, which also means, hey, you don't have to pay money for heat unless it gets extremely cold in your house, and then you use a really, really low water ceramic heat emitter. But also, they do lose their tails and they don't grow them back, and then, yeah. That's pretty much it about crested geckos, and I'm not lying when I tell you this, that gargoyle geckos are pretty much the exact same as crested geckos, just I believe they might regrow their tails. I don't know for sure. I mean, it's not really all that big of a deal. It doesn't affect care in any way, but they're almost identical to crested geckos in their care. I believe they get a little bit larger, so I would go a little bit larger in the enclosure, and if they don't, then still go a little bit larger, because bigger is better for the most part, especially if it's an adult. And, you know, yeah, that's always cool. I would not recommend keeping these species together unless you are, or, well, don't keep these species together at all unless you were, like, really know what you're doing, hybridizing them, which I mean, leave that to the professionals. But I don't recommend keeping the same species together, because they can really bully each other and they can fight and they can use territories. You really need to know what you're looking for in order to cohab anything, but even then it's always a risk. It's always going to be a risk, so it's really not recommended. So yeah. That's pretty much it though. I mean, I kind of yammered on the last two because I'm a little tired, I'm a little sore, and I want to drink water and go to bed. But I hope you all are having an awesome night. I hope you enjoyed seeing my geckers. And leopard geckos are literally the only lizards I have right now, so I'm sorry. But let me know if you want to see more beginner on a budget, because I will be sure to make some more videos. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Bye guys!